In this video we'll look at Mountergate in yellow, Rose Lane in green and the area between, Bolton Street in pink, St John's Street and Orchard Street in orange and Bloomsbury Place in blue. Beginning at the very top of Mountergate at its corner with King Street, this is Howard House, built around 1660 by Henry Howard and seen here in 1934. The gardens were part of the first of several pleasure gardens in Norwich, this one known as My Lord's Garden. Into Mountergate itself, this wall gives seclusion to the residential accommodation behind, but it's actually the original factory wall of the Co-op shoe factory seen here in 1998. The factory occupied this site from 1923 to 1987 in accommodation which had been bought from Bolton and Paul's. More about that later. Opposite this wall is St Anne's Apartments, and just over there was Synagogue Street, named after this synagogue, founded in 1849 and closed in 1942 as a result of war damage. The house to the right of the synagogue is on the extreme left of this photo of Synagogue Street housing. This is the corner of St John's Street, formerly named Orchard Street, and here once stood the Orchard Pub from 1857 until it suffered war damage in 1940 and never reopened. Opposite was the Hop Pole Tavern, which closed in the 1880s, and that name is recalled in Hop Pole Yard, part of the St Anne's development. This is Weaver's house, presumably used for weaving in the light of the window at the top. At one time in the late 1800s it was a shoe factory, and this picture dates from 1936. Behind Weaver's house, set back from Mountergate, is St Faith's house. Mountergate had previously been known as St Faith's Lane, a continuation of the street of that name to the north of Prince of Wales Road. Back onto Mountergate and opposite Weaver's house is the Rose Lane car park on the site of the Norwich Fish Market, which occupied this location from 1914 to 1980. These photos show the fish market just after its closure. On to Rose Lane now. This is the Charles Darwin School, based in a former office block. At the beginning of the 1900s, this was the location of Morris Carriages. This is another view of the Rose Lane car park. Does anyone know what the 500,000 holes in the cladding signify? This is an equivalent view of the corner of Rose Lane and Mountergate in 1976. Looking back at the Mountergate junction with Rose Lane currently looks like this, but it looked like this in 1962, the pub on the corner being the Foundry Bridge Tavern, which closed in 1965. Crossing the road and now looking up Rose Lane, this is the 2024 view, but in 1955 this was the entrance to Bloomsbury Place, the pub on the corner being the Express Train, which dated from 1853 until 1963. From the former entrance to Bloomsbury Place and looking across to the corner of St Vitus Street now looks like this. In the 1890s, this was the equivalent view, with St Vitus Street named Cathedral Street South, and this view is from 1970. Just beyond St Vitus Street and looking across Rose Lane looks like this, but 60 years ago in 1964 the whole area was waiting to be demolished and redeveloped. Across the road now is the Rose Lane Business Centre, also known as the Union Building and including the rooftop gardens. This was the entrance to St John's Street in this location in 1964. The left-hand corner appears to be a shop run by M. Lake, and the right-hand corner was the Free Trade Tavern from 1853 to 1967. Go into St John's Street and turn around. Looking back towards Rose Lane, this would have been your view. Come back onto Rose Lane. From in front of the Rose Lane Business Centre, this is the view looking towards Maidstone Road opposite, which had looked like this in 1973, the site of Gerald Giles, which had been here since 1968, having previously been at number 3, further up the hill on the other side. This is a general 2024 view looking towards the city centre compared to how it had looked in 1958, St John's Street on the left and Maidstone Street just visible on the right. This is Tudor Hall, known as Henry's at the time of this 1987 photo, situated on the corner of Bolton Street, a name that appears to be lost now. This is the view looking towards this street in 2024 compared to how it looked in the 1890s. The Princess of Wales pub was on the left hand corner, and into the street was Bolton and Paul factory with its chimneys also visible on this image. Given the location of the castle, the street in the foreground appears to be St John's Street. Come out of Bolton Street and look across at the corner of Greyfriars Road. This is the same location as seen back in the 1950s. Opposite and just up from Tudor Hall, this shop is number 5 Rose Lane, known as Tudor Hall Stores at the time of this 1936 photo. Across the junction with King Street, this is the present day view, a location full of posters back in the 1890s. After the credits we'll have a closer look at these posters, but here is a final shot looking back at Rose Lane from Cattle Market Street with the 1962 equivalent, the building in the centre of the photo at number 2 having previously been the Rose Tavern until 1911.